Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, a new kind of podcast where no topic is off limits. We're bringing in experts and owners to have the conversations we should be having as a dog community. Each week, a new guest will share firsthand experiences, educational resources, or professional guidance to help you learn and grow along with your dog. You won't get one perspective here, you'll get them all, because every dog is different and every owner is too.
You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Straight Up Dog Talk, or by visiting www.straightupdogtalk.com. Tune in from any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk. I'm Em, and unfortunately Josh isn't here tonight, but we do have a really special guest. Her name is Angie, and she was actually Fitz's trainer. How are you doing tonight, Angie?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm so excited we actually get to do an interview in person. We don't get to do that very often.
I know, it's been too long since I've seen you.
I know, it really has. When I realized that Fitz's birthday was coming up and that he was going to be 6, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that much time has passed. And we see each other on social media and sometimes at Target, but we don't really ever get together like we used to when we were working with Fitz. So I think that's a great opportunity for us to catch up, but also to share the wealth of knowledge that you have with the listeners.
So I look forward to sharing it.
So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and Pip and just kind of like your home life?
Sure. Well, this is my 14th year of training. Pippi is my miniature Australian Shepherd. She's almost 7 years old now. Just crazy to even think about. She's awesome. She's a little diva. We're teaching tricks all the time. So, 14 years of training and still learning every week.
I think that, that's an incredible way to put it, because you are always learning with training, and you can always get better, and you can always advance your skills, and you can always learn something new by observing, other trainers either on social media or just in practice of day-to-day life. So I think that's great that you're open to always continuing to learn. What did you tell everybody a little bit about how you got started as a dog trainer and why you decided to be a dog trainer?
Sure. So I had an Australian Shepherd. This would have been well over 20 years ago, named Moxton. I had him for 15 years. He was a very difficult dog from the very beginning. This is before I ever got into the training world. I had read about dogs and loved dogs, but I had never got into training at this point. He was a very special dog. He had some aggressive tendencies from the beginning. And so I had to get very creative on how to keep him alive, let's just say that, so that he didn't have to be put down due to biting people. He had bit 2 people before he was a year old, broke the skin. There was a lot of red flags when I picked him out of the litter. And back then, I didn't know what I was looking for. I thought he was the shy, quiet, calm puppy. Come to find out, he just wasn't a social dog. He was the one in the back of the room with you. He had his head stuffed behind the kennel. So he wanted nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the other puppies in the room. And that's the one I chose. And his entire life, he was kind of that dog that just said, leave me alone. I don't want to be a part of this. And so just not wired right, I think, from the beginning. And for 15 years, I met with a couple trainers here in town in Cedar Rapids when I first moved here to try to help correct the behavior and teach me how to work him through it. I can say I didn't have a lot of success there. And so there was a day, I remember it was after one of our first, it was a group training class, and it was our last session. The trainer in there couldn't even get within 10 feet of us because he'd lunge out at the end of the leash and snarl, bark. So she was afraid of him. Mm-hmm. That last class, I remember getting in my car, looking at him, and I'm like, I don't know what else to do with you. Like, I just don't know. So it just kind of felt hopeless. Well, I was in Galena, I don't know how many weeks after that. And, in Galena, there's all those shops downtown. Mm-hmm. And there was a lady sitting out with her 2 boxers down amongst all the people and all the shops. And they were very calm, hanging out. All the people didn't bother them. So I approached her and I asked her, how did you do that? If it was just one dog, I would probably say, hey, and she probably got lucky, right? Super calm dog. But there was 2 there behaving well. So I approached her and I asked her, how did you do that? What did you do? And she told me about a trainer that she met with that at the time was in Wisconsin. It was called That's My Dog. And she gave me the information. Her name was Robin McFarland. She's now a world-renowned trainer. I can get into more of her stuff later, but she was a lifesaver for me. I called her up and I lived like about an hour and a half away, but I chose still to go meet with her with my dog. And she was the first trainer I'd met that could take the leash, walk with confidence, and he followed her. And what kind of voodoo spell did you put on my dog? Because no one's ever been able to do that. And I signed up for her program, couldn't afford it at the time. You know, I was living in a little one-bedroom apartment, had to put it on my credit card, but the best money I ever spent. And she taught me a whole different way of training, how to communicate with my dog. And I said, you know what? This needs to come to Cedar Rapids. There wasn't anyone that I could find at the time that could help me with a dog like him, you know. And anyway, I mentored under her for about 8 years. She was nice enough to let me drive there, observe classes, just learn the business. And so that's pretty much how I got started. I started the business in 2009 and hit the ground running. Haven't stopped since.
Yeah. I found you in 2018, I believe. I think that's right. Fitz was about 6-ish. Fitz was actually, I think, 10 months old when we finally got in with you, because we did have to wait for a little bit to get in with you, because your wait list was long at that point in time. And I know that it's probably even longer now, but we waited a couple of months and you came, and I mean, that's how I felt about you. You know, Fitz doesn't always like new people. He doesn't like new situations. He doesn't like new dogs. He doesn't like pretty much anything that's out of his control. And you came in and told him to sit. He sat, and you're like, okay, let me give you a demonstration. And we went out in the parking lot, and I remember you did the demonstration, and I was sold at that point. And then, of course, we came inside, and Toby was inside your bag eating all of your treats. And so I remember that well. Toby, we're actually at my house this evening, and Toby is still looking for her treats because he knows that she's always got the good.
As a treat lady.
She really changed my trajectory with Fitz, and I'll forever be grateful to you for that, because he's still a hard dog, and he's still too smart for his own good, but you really helped him get a handle on that. And I'll never forget the day that we were teaching him place, and you were putting him in those little, like the laundry basket and the little square gray basket that I had, and he did it, and he was so proud of himself, and we posted those pictures on Facebook, and just that big smile on his face. It's just one of my favorite memories with him and with you.
I remember that day well. That was fun. I still have the pictures.
I do too. They come up on my Facebook every once in a while, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so funny. I don't think you could fit in that basket anymore.
How's you just teach him to do the laundry?
Oh, that would be super, super nice if we could teach him to do the laundry. Let's talk a little bit about the methods that you use as a trainer, because you use a little bit different methods than some of the other trainers that we've had on here. I am not opposed to using all of the tools that are available to us as owners or guardians. There are people that are going to have opinions about this episode, and that's okay, because again, this is a podcast where we are removing all elements of shame for dog owners, and sometimes you need a little bit more of a, not forceful, I don't want to say that because that's negative, but you need something that's more attention grabbing for some dogs. And sometimes you just need tools that help you be successful and keep you out of danger. Fitz is about 50 pounds. He is very strong. And I had spinal surgery. And if he were to pull me down and I was to crack my head open, it could kill me because I don't have all of the vertebrae in my neck. So you helped me teach him to work on a leash successfully so that I was not in danger. So let's talk a little bit about that method and how you teach others to use it.
Sure. So first of all, I'm a balance trainer. So I use your praise. I use all the traditional training methods, body language, teaching you to use your energy. But I also understand that dogs understand consequence as well. So we use corrections also to redirect the dog, and they understand that. I mean, in training, you're always teaching a dog kind of how to take the pressure, right? If you're using a leash, you're using the leash to apply pressure to the dog to achieve a certain command. You want him to come to you. He's not paying attention. What do? You put pressure on the leash, right? That's one thing you can do. He learns the pressure comes off when he starts to move in your direction. And they understand that concept, right? As humans, we do as well. When there's a consequence applied, and it might just be a verbal interruption, it could be like a pop of the leash. It could be even the snap of a finger that just gets the dog to redirect, turn its head to you. Nobody likes to have a lot of pressure on, right? So we try to avoid that. The dog learns how to avoid pressure, therefore changing his behavior. So I use every training tool. I'm not opposed to any of the training tools out there. I truly believe that any training tool used properly can be used in a positive way, So I specialize in working with the remote collars, the e-collars. I've been using them now for over 20 years. They're definitely my tool of choice for a lot of reasons. I know there's a lot of controversy around the e-collars, but we can talk a little bit more about why I choose to use them too. But like any training tool, any tool, they can be used for positive or they could be used for negative.
It truly is all about the intention behind the use of the tool.
Right.
If you're forcing a dog to do something by choking them, that is negative. That is correct. There's not any argument in that direction at all. I think where people get hung up on the e-collars is that they think that you are, you're shocking the dog, you're burning the dog's skin, all of these things. And I remember I was a little bit nervous when you first came over and we talked about using the e-collar. Sure. And, being a vet tech, I've seen some of the worst things like the bark collars. The bark collar and the e-collar are two different things. The bark collar, every time they use their vocal cords, it is shocking them. And it's like, I've seen burned vocal cords. I've seen holes in skin. I've seen all kinds of stuff because people just leave their dogs unattended with this tool on their neck that is obviously giving them some kind of nudge to not behave that way. But there are some dogs that it just doesn't work on. And I remember that you made me put my fingers on the prongs and hit the stimulation button on myself. And we turned it up and we turned it down. And I realized that the way that the e-collar works it's not necessarily like a shock. It's more like a TENS machine. Right. And if you don't know what a TENS machine is, a TENS machine basically uses this stimulation to activate the nerves under the skin and cause them to jump. And that's exactly what the e-collars do. And when you press the button, then the nerves activate in the dog's neck and their neck jumps, and that redirects them, like you said, that cue to pay attention to you. And honestly, the way that Fitz was when he was a puppy, it was the first thing that worked. And sometimes that's just the way it is. There are dogs that are stubborn. There are dogs that are hard-headed. Would I leave him unattended and just let him prance around with that collar on? No. I'm always actively with him, and he doesn't have it on all the time. We call it the active listening collar for a reason. There are times that I can just put it on him, not even turn it on, not even get the remote out, and his behavior changes entirely. And never in a negative way. He's always happy to have his collar on because he knows it comes with treats. He gets paid for it.
Right.
And he's okay with it. Again, not everybody's going to agree with that. But as you said, it is your method, your preferred method. So let's talk about why it's your preferred method.
Right. So like you said, not every dog's created equal, just like people. Some need a little more of a nudge than others. I work with a lot of reactive dogs. I tend to get a lot of dogs that have been to other trainers. Yeah, well, kind of like me in the beginning. I'd been to a few other trainers, and you kind of hit that ceiling pretty quick with reactive dogs, and knowing there had to be something else out there. you know? And for me, it was the e-collar. The first time I was nervous too. I mean, it's considered electricity and that's not my realm, right? I'm not an electrician. So I was nervous too, but, you look into the science behind it. And when it comes to e-collars, there are hundreds of brands on the market, thousands probably at this point. Not sure. You can go on Amazon and you can buy one, but I would never recommend anyone to do that. Don't go on Amazon, don't buy an e-collar and just start using it. That's the wrong way. It does take professional training and direction. Just like I'm not going to go out and buy a bunch of power tools and pretend I know how to use them because my house would fall down. So I need someone to show me how to do it right in order to have the positive effect that you want. So there's only a couple brands of e-collars on the market that I'll use due to the quality of them. Most of the time when you see sores on the dog's neck, like I worked in a vet clinic as well prior to training, so we saw that too. Usually it's from with the chafing. I'm not saying there are not collars out there that are so low quality that they're causing burns. I'm sure there are collars out there that do that. E-collars came out in the 1960s and they were big, bad, and ugly. Luckily, technology's come a long way, and finding the right e-collar is very important. That's where you would talk to a professional that's been using them, get their recommendation. But kind of forget where I was going with this one.
That's okay. Do you still use the same brand of e-collar? We don't have to say what brand if you're not comfortable, but do you still use the same one that we used with Fitz?
It's possible. I think around that time I may have switched brands.
Okay.
Is it a black remote?
It's a blue remote, and it's round.
Okay, that is the brand I use now.
Okay. So that's good to know, because obviously, like, if we were to need a refresher course and I was to have you come over, then we would still be in the same realm of and wouldn't need to replace or upgrade our tools to make sure that we were handling the situation correctly.
Right. Well, so going back to the quality of the e-collar, that one specifically that you're talking about, when it comes to the quality of the e-collar, that one has 100 settings on it. Mm-hmm. And some people, when I say 100 settings, their eyes open really wide, like, whoa. There's collars out there also that have 10 settings. The difference would be on your collar that has 1 to 10 settings, let's just say, there's a big jump between level 2 and 3. You might not feel level 2 at all. Level 3 is going to make you want to throw it across the room. Well, that's too big of a jump, and it's not about inflicting pain on the dog. That is absolutely not our goal. We're not punishing the dog in any way. So the last thing I want is for that dog to have a negative association, to feel that like pain. That's not what we want. When we have 0 to 100 levels, for example, I'm just going to use, or I won't say the brand that I use, but that one I can speak for does not have a big jump between each setting.
I can actually comment on that because we use it, and I know that we're talking about the same one now. For Fitz, on the scale of 0 to 100, we usually, depending on how amped up he is and where we're at with whatever it is that we're trying to correct the behavior, we're usually somewhere between 20 and 25.
Yeah, and see, 28 to 25 for me, I would jump a little at 20 to 25. That's me, but I have some dogs that do work 20, 25, and it's just what I would call kind of a baseline level. That's just where they feel like a tap on the shoulder. And that's not for me to say that's right or wrong. I judge off of how the dog's reacting. The dog's not going to lie to you. If it's too high, they're going to tell you. If it's too low, they have no sense of urgency to make the pressure go away. They're not going to, they may not respond. So you listen to the dog. He'll tell you.
Well, I remember when you were training me how to use it, you showed me, like, we're just going to take it up one notch at a time. Take it up one notch at a time. And when we see him, you'll know. And I believe that at that point in time, when he was only like 10 months old, I think that the threshold was like 10 or 11.
Right.
But as he's grown, the number has gone up. He's also very hard-headed. He is very determined. He's very stubborn. Mm-hmm. And he's also just kind of a beast. I mean, he's only 50 pounds. He's a medium-sized dog. We're not talking about like an extra-large Mastiff or a Great Dane or anything like that. I mean, he's a medium-sized dog. But he's a tank. And
And honestly, when it comes to this, size doesn't matter.
Yeah,
That's
correct.
The Great Danes, they're the most sensitive. They're the largest breed. They're also the most sensitive dogs. I work lower levels on them than I would say a Pomeranian or a Chihuahua, So it all comes down to their temperament, what their personalities like. And typically, most breeds, I could say I can probably name a range that most of them work in. But ultimately, you're listening to the dog.
And you train dogs of all sizes.
Correct.
And let's reference back here to Piffy. Piffy is little.
She'd be like 15 pounds.
She's like the same size as Toby for the followers who follow on Instagram. She's about the same size as Toby, and she's fast and she's little, and she's also very smart. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we have gone on a couple trail walks together with Fitz and Piffy, and had knee deep in mud a couple of times. Mm-hmm. But knowing that you have a range of dogs is also helpful, because I think that there's a negative misconception when it comes to small dogs. People don't think they need to train for small dogs, but other guests have said this: a bite is a bite. It doesn't matter if it's a big dog or a little dog. If the dog is biting, it's a problem.
Correct.
And it is something that needs to be effectively dealt with. Now, whether that's an e-collar or just a simple behavior correction, that's, again, up to the owner and the trainer's discretion. But finding a dog trainer that trains a range of breeds and sizes is really important.
Correct. I work anything from your young, happy-go-lucky puppies to dogs that are maybe 5 years old, have a bite record, and it's kind of their last resort. Is that now they're on their third trainer and they're kind of feeling like they're out of options, or if the dog hurts someone again, what's going to happen to that dog? And I don't look at e-collar as a last resort, so I don't mean that. I use the e-collar on, if I could start every dog around 4 months old, I would. It's pre-adolescent. Before any too many, I'm going to say, naughty habits have formed, teenage behavior, really, when they become an adolescent, they can be a little more challenging to train, and that's mostly because their impulse control is lacking control. Yeah, their frontal cortex isn't even fully developed until they're almost 2, and that frontal cortex is what controls impulse.
We have had several of the listeners actually reach out and bring up this exact topic, dog puberty, and how all of a sudden, training was going fine. And then all of a sudden we had this behavior change and our training regressed and we just kept doing what we were doing. But dog puberty it's an actual thing. It's a thing. And I think that a lot of people struggle with it or think that they're regressing, but it's just part of dog behavior.
It's part of the process. I say you're kind of on that roller coaster ride up until, for me, I would say about 1.5 years. That's kind of when they start coming out of adolescence, 1.5 to 2 years, and you start to see the behaviors start to level off. All that hard work you put in starts to really show. Up until then, you kind of have one really great day and like, wow, this is great. The next day you're going, what happened? And that's just part of the process, and knowing that if you stick with it and you stay consistent, it'll pay off.
100%. Consistency is the key. And I can 100% say, and you guys can judge me all you want here, I'm not always consistent. I've lacked in some of my training, and we are about to remedy that, with a variety of different things, starting the dog training mentorship, probably reconnecting with you and touching upon some skills and just overall general things, because I need Fitz to behave better in public situations. Like people can't ring the doorbell at my house. People can't just walk up the stairs without him barking or getting crazy. He came over tonight and I had to say, text me when you get here so I can throw Fitz outside, just because it's easier. Not that he's going to run out the door, not that he's going to bite you, but just because he's going to bark for 15 minutes at you, unless I let you into the house. And then he realizes, oh, this person is here. He barked at you for a couple minutes and it was done. But had you rung the doorbell, it would have been a totally different story. So again, I think that's just an area, we can all do better. We can all continue to grow and learn and learn new things that help us be better. And that's, again, kind of the message of this podcast, is to keep trying, keep doing new things, and look for resources that are out there and available to you that can help you with these kinds of things. Why don't you talk a little bit about what's included in your training?
Sure. So my programs have changed a little bit over the years of what's been included. So my programs will include the one-on-one training instruction, which is where I come to the house and work one-on-one with you. So mostly I'm training people, right? So I'm training you. And it also comes with any training equipment that we might need, whether that's the e-collar, prong collar, just a standard flat buckle collar, long line, treat tote. I mean, that's just to name a few of the things that could be included with it. I don't use a prong collar on every dog. I don't use a martingale on every dog. It really is tailored to that person's needs and the dog.
One of the things that we have talked about with other trainers is the importance of training at home before taking the dogs out into the real world. And that was something that I really, really liked about training with you, because Fitz is reactive and he doesn't like to go outside of his comfort zones. And initially, one of our goals had been to start taking him to like Home Depot and places like that. And you had told me at that point in time, even when he was just, barely over a year old, that maybe that just wasn't the right fit for him at this point in time, because he was super reactive and he did not even like walking past a certain point in the parking lot because he couldn't see where my car was or where the door was. And he would like try to correct us and go back in a different direction. And so we never made it to the Home Depot. And maybe that's just because that's the way Fitz is and that's the way he will always be. But it's definitely something that, I'm going to continue to work on with him, because Fitz is not a dog that likes to walk. He doesn't like to be outside of his comfort zone. He would rather be out in the backyard playing fetch and doing his own thing, or just dilly-dallying around out there with his ball. If I am taking my dog out on a walk and he is stressed out and he won't go to the bathroom and he's panting and he's like trying to turn around and clawing to get back to the house, all that does is stress him out and stress me out. So why would I put my dog through that? And I think that people need to understand that just not every dog is built for being your running buddy or going on walks or going to the dog park. I know you and I both have pretty strong feelings about the dog park, and it's just not an area that, I go to anymore. I've broken up too many dog fights. I know that we went and practiced at the dog park in the solo area a couple of times. Fine with that. But just the dog park here in general, there are so many irresponsible owners and people don't pay attention to what their dogs are doing. And then it's these dogs that are labs attacking other dogs and no one's correcting the behavior. And it's just, it just shocks me the amount of people there are out there that just assume that their dog will be fine at the dog park with other dogs in a completely foreign situation because it's a lab or because it's a golden retriever as of their breed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild to me how people just make those assumptions based on a breed. And another thing that this podcast is trying to do is kind of re-blur that line with social media, because there are so many content creators out there that are showing, these great, hilarious, fun videos of the dog, behind the steering wheel in the car, or the dog jumping on the trampoline, or just any funny little situation that they can come up with. And these videos are great. But what people fail to understand is that a lot of time and energy and training went into those situations. It's not something that just happens overnight. You can't just get a dog and it's going to act just like that dog on Instagram.
Right. I completely agree with you. I think, there's a lot of videos. When you said there's a lot of videos out there of dogs, I'm thinking of the ones that people think are cute, where it's, maybe a little chihuahua showing its teeth or biting at their owner, and it's funny. And, I get it. But yeah, social media, you have to take it with a grain of salt for sure. 100%. It's truly one of those barriers that's been created because of owners who
are trying to do something that's fun and cute. And it is fun and cute. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy those videos very much. But I also see the other side of that video. I know what was put into it work-wise. Yes, they make it look like it just happened in the video. And yeah, us that have been around dogs our whole life, worked with them professionally, know that that wasn't the case.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about another thing that you do as a trainer. And this is something, again, that has been a highly requested topic from the listeners, is your pack walk. This is something that we have not participated in, again, because Fitz does not like to be around other dogs. But this is something that I think I will probably come and observe myself, because you always send the emails and I always think about going, and then, things get crazy and I just don't. But I want you to talk a little bit about how your pack walks work. You have really strict rules, and you have a really good format for it, so that it's not dangerous for owners or other dogs. And you always make sure that everybody brings their leash and their poop bags and water.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to talk about this, because pack walks are a good thing. I think that having dogs that can be social and are comfortable being social is wonderful. And I think a little bit of your structure, explaining that to the listeners, is really a good indicator of what to look for in a training.
Sure. So my pack walks have evolved over the years, and where we're at now at them is we meet in spring, summer, and fall. We meet at local parks. There's about a list of 4 to 5 of them that we'll meet at any given time. There could be anywhere between 3 dogs or 25 dogs. I think the most we had on a pack walk once was about 41, which was a pretty big group. The weather was great though. And so what we do is it's open to anyone that is signed up for a training program or is included. Most of my programs include unlimited pack walks for the life of the dog currently. And I designed that because, I have a lot of clients that have reactive dogs that prior to training with me, they would tell me, I can't walk my dog around my own neighborhood. Like, we are that dog, that people cross the street when they see us. And it doesn't matter if it's a Doberman, a Rottweiler, a Lab, if they see a dog acting out, lunging at the end of the leash, barking, they're across the street. Nobody wants to be that dog in the neighborhood, right? But a lot of the clients I work with, they hire me because they say, I can't walk my dog. I really just want to walk. So we walk in their neighborhood, we walk past their own distractions. The same neighbor, dog that's behind a fence that they might react to is out. We work head on with those distractions. I teach the client how to communicate with their dog in those moments on what they need from the dog. That the lunging, the barking, the pulling on the leash is not acceptable. We give then an alternate behavior. We communicate very clearly. The dog eventually figures out that I can walk by another dog and not lose my mind, right? And it's kind of like in that moment, you just see it's like a weight is lifted off their shoulders. And it's a neat moment to capture. And it's hard to do that if you don't have a controlled environment to work around. So first we teach in their own neighborhood, and that builds up their confidence. There might not be a lot of distractions there at the time when I'm training. It could be 3:00 in the afternoon, everyone's at work. We might not have a distraction, but that builds the confidence for the handler and the dog on where they're supposed to be on the walk. Shoulder in line with the hip, slack leash, so your arm's not be, torn off on the walk. But I tell them, walk under with low distraction first. Teach the dog what's expected of them. All right, now walk, when you feel like you've reached that level of success and you're confident, now walk by that house that always has the dog that runs out to the end of the fence and barks. Now challenge the dog. You know how to work the dog through it. Work the dog through it. They might get to that point where it's working great. All right, now come to the pack walks. Now there's all these other dogs to work around, and no one's judging you. A lot of people say, I've never come because I'm embarrassed. My dog is going to be embarrassing me. He's going to bark and he's going to, or they don't want to be that person. I say, that's why you should come, because if your goal is to be able to take your dog to farmers markets or take them on a trail where you're going to pass by other dogs, this is kind of a key element here. And I tell you, majority of the dogs that are on their pack walks were in that same spot. And you wouldn't know You'd walk in, you'd see them walking, and they're like the model student, and people will come and go, I want my dog to do that. And they'll point at one of the dogs. And I kind of laugh sometimes to myself because I go, well, if you would have seen that dog, let's say a year ago, 2 years ago, you would see that dog started where yours is at, but that just goes to show you that you put the time and the effort and you get the right direction, you can achieve that. Now, there are some dogs that are the exception, like maybe Fitz is one of those that's just not his realm, and he may never be. And that's okay. And what I love is that you recognize it. That for us as an owner, we have to realize that our dogs they're unique. And some people are introverts, some are extroverts. We can't force an introvert to be an extrovert. No. And it's no different with dogs. So just recognizing that, working with him, training him, you're doing the best thing for him.
Thank you for saying that. I think that a lot of that goes back to being a veterinary technician, and, that ties in hand with training, that ties hand in hand with pet sitting, because you have to learn to read the dog's body language. If you don't understand what that dog is saying to you, because dogs don't speak the human language. They can't look at you and say, my foot hurts, my ear hurts, I'm going to throw up. They can't do those things. They don't speak human. And if you pay enough attention and you take enough time to learn how to read what your dog is saying to you, it makes a huge world of difference in your relationship with your dog. And unfortunately, I think most of the time, Fitz kind of is the exception. Is he good with commands? Yes. I just showed you when you came over all the new tricks that he can do. He's smart as a whip. He can do all of the things that I want him to do if he's in his safe zone. You take him outside of his safe zone and he's like, the floor fell out from underneath him, and he is not confident anymore, and he's not silly and goofy and, being sick. I think Toby just farted, guys. It's kind of like taking over the room now. No, yay. Hi, buddy. But, there's dogs like Toby, which he's fine on a walk. He was fine when he was younger on a walk. He had to go on walks because I lived in an apartment most of his life. And he would do fine on walks, and he was completely okay with that situation. And now he's like, okay, we got like 30 seconds away from the house. I'm old. I'm going to lay down. I'm done with the walk. So it's, the dog that's dragging me home and the dog that wants me to be carried the entire walk. So two totally different situations happening. So we don't usually travel in the pair situation with these two because it's too difficult. When I make veterinary appointments, Toby is at 10 o'clock and Fitz is at noon because it's just too difficult to manage everything else. Yeah. And age span, Toby's somewhere between 12 and 13 years old, and Fitz is just about to be 6. It's a big gap. And Fitz is also very high energy. So that also makes a very big difference in how we look at, what we do in our lives. And I feel like, again, catering to each situation is really, really important. Now, you mentioned the follow-up training. Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like.
Okay, so when it comes to the follow-up, I can say it's actually pretty rare that I have to come back after we finish up with the program. Although there's certain cases where maybe, someone moves or their living situation changes. Maybe they get a second dog. There's all these things in life that change, right? And can stress a dog out and change behaviors. In those cases, definitely call me. I'll come in and work you through it. But the follow-up lessons are just like it's a lower hourly rate for me to come out, because I'm not starting from scratch there. But I just come out to spend about an hour with you and tweak anything that we need to, add anything to the program that we need to. But I can tell you it's pretty rare. Once I train you, as you know, what's nice is you can carry that with you to the next dog and the next dog. But most of the time I can talk to you over the phone. We can do a video chat, or a virtual lesson, or just chat. You can send me a video message even and say, show me the video of your dog doing whatever it's doing, and I can walk you through. I'll say, remember, your list of commands. Okay, you look at your list of commands as like tools in your tool belt. Okay, ask yourself, what commands here does he know well that I can use? And so that's really what my follow-up is. The pad walks are great too, because that's after our one-on-ones are usually finished. By that time, you are adding in that extra challenge. Okay, all right, my dog walks great around my neighborhood now. Let's take him on the trail walk with multiple other dogs. And, you can create as much space as you need to there, and I'm there. I don't bring my own dog on the pack walks. A lot of people ask me why I don't bring my own dog on the pack walks. That is because typically I'm helping out the newcomers, which can be hard to do when I have my own dog. Sometimes I have to jump in kind of quick. I like to be able to take the leash and walk with someone else's dog just to help with technique if needed. And it's just a little bit more difficult to do when I have my own. But follow up, definitely. If anyone needs it, call me. I'm not going anywhere. It's lifetime follow up for the dog.
I love that. We actually should probably do a follow up. Again, that's been on the list of things that just keeps getting shoved under. But I mean, having you here again and the dogs recognizing you and reconnecting with you, that makes me definitely remember how much fun it is to work with you. And we should definitely schedule a follow up. I do want to tell the listeners something about you taught us and how it evolved, how we have changed it and it evolved into something else. Because for me, this was the most valuable thing that you taught me. And it didn't even realize it was going to be the most valuable thing that you taught me. And I know that I've told you this before, but you taught us to do place in several different places. When I originally hired you, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had no yard. And you taught me to teach Fitz place in several places, like I said earlier, in the baskets. But you also taught him to get in the bathtub, which was huge for us. Eventually, over time, we traded the word place for feet because he would go outside and he would get muddy and I would need to rinse off his feet. So we traded place for feet. And now when I say we need to do your feet, he will run straight from the back door into the bathroom, jump in the tub, and wait for me to rinse off his feet and then dry him off. So thank you so much for teaching us that, because
You're giving everybody all these ideas.
It was so valuable. I have a video of it on my TikTok and my Instagram of him. I probably need to take a better high quality because that was when I was first starting out, like showing people. But it really has been a very valuable thing for us. And I will forever be grateful for you for teaching us that one.
Good to hear. Place is one of my favorite commands. It's probably the most fun for me to teach, but it's also the most fun for the dog to learn. It's all treat-based, just teaching them to get all 4 feet on whatever it is you point at and say, place. It can be a dog bed. It could be a rug, a mat, piece of furniture. It could be a picnic table at the park. It could be the scale at the vet. Mm-hmm. Makes life easy.
Oh yeah, we use place at the vet for sure.
Car. I mean, there's so many uses for it. I taught. There's 2 dogs I worked with today on place, and one was a 4.5 pound dog. So we talked about all different sizes. 4.5 pounds. Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. I absolutely love that. We are starting to get towards the end of our time here, but what would you say to the listeners is the most important thing to look in a trainer when you're searching for a trainer?
Good question. I would say you have to find one that you fit with. I would ask questions about, how long have you been doing this? Have you worked with dogs that are experiencing the same issue, whether it's reactivity, anxiety is a big one right now, since COVID, mm-hmm. right? But ask questions. Ask a good question like you asked me earlier, how did you get started? Get a gauge on their education level. Just ask questions. And, a good trainer, a good reputable trainer will be able to answer all of them with confidence. I would read reviews, testimonials, those speak volumes. Ask your vet. A lot of local vets, they hear from their clients what worked for them, what didn't work for them. And they tend to have a great referral list. I would say that's probably the top things that come to mind right there. I like to demo the dog myself in front of the client. Like we said, I did that with Fitz, and that's how the trainer that I started with years and years ago, Robin, that watching the trainer with your own dog, the proof is in the pudding. That's how I look at it.
It really is. And like I said, I mean, you were the first person that I called. You came highly recommended by several people, which is why I was like, this is who I'm going with, because you were the highest rated. You were well known by lots of my dog sitting clients at the time. And it was just, you were the right fit. But seeing you work directly with Fitz and how he responded to you, that's what sealed the deal for me. And I totally agree with you on that point. Like, make sure that the trainer is connecting with your dog, because again, every dog is different. Every owner is different. Every trainer is different. Every method that they use is different. And you have to find that correct combination. If that means you have to go through 4 different trainers before you find the one that works for you, that's okay. You wouldn't go to a doctor or a therapist for yourself that you didn't feel comfortable and confident that they were on the right track to help you. Why would you do that to your dog?
Exactly. I found my trainer by asking the lady that had 2 well-behaved dogs. How did you do that? You asked people, you asked around, and people aren't going to refer someone that they weren't happy with. Yeah, 100%. I look at it. I'm remodeling my house right now. It's an older house, needs a lot of work. And the best contractors that I have found were ones that were referred by trusted friends and family. And that's, I think, in the training world with dogs is no different. Ask your vet, ask your neighbor. If you see your neighbor walking a dog that's walking wonderful on a leash, ask them, how did you do that? Did you hire a trainer? If so, cool. So I don't advertise. It's all word of mouth and all referrals. And I'm totally happy with that.
I love that. And I mean, we really, truly did have a wonderful experience with you. We still use a lot of the keywords and things that you taught us. I'm sure there's plenty of things that I have forgotten, which is why I'm saying we probably need a refresher, because it has been a while. But the thing is that being able to connect with a trainer and having a relationship with your trainer and feeling confident enough to reach out to you and say, hey, do you want to come be on my podcast? Which now, of course, we haven't even gotten to like half of the things I wanted to talk to you about. So I hope that you'll come back.
Absolutely.
Because there are so many other topics, like, how COVID affected your training business and how you modified your training schedule and your techniques and how you trained in order to fix that. And then the after effects of, people being home and how that affected the business as well. So there's definitely some topics that I would love to touch on with you again. So we're definitely going to have you come back. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up for tonight.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Straight Up Dog Talk, and we will see you guys next week.
Straight Up Dog Talk was created by Emily Breslin. It is edited, produced, and co-hosted by Josh Wasta under the supervision of Straight Up Dog Talk, LLC, and Emily Breslin. If you're enjoying this podcast, follow or subscribe to be sure you don't miss an episode, and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Looking for more honest and relatable dog content? Check out our sister show, Unpacked, with Jerry Sheriff and Madison Simpson. Thanks for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. See you next week.